So, this view signals to the relevance of the focus on interpretation or meaning making. I'm coming back to this point. This term also adopted by G. Lupin, Pribari, Clenchia, Noble, Lamb, and various other authors that research new literacies, multiliteracies, or critical literacies. But then let me come back to the beginning of this assertion, let's say. The relevance of interpretation and meaning making. So why then we come to this focus when we talk of changes, in language, technology, language, communication, education, then how do we relate this idea of interpretation to the changes that I referred to? Okay? Why? Obvious? Your faces tell me it's a bit obvious, but I'm going to say something about it. Anyway, the idea is, of course, that if language has been changing, if we have new modalities in language, we should probably revisit the idea that we had before of interpretation. And let me tell you, we as people who have been teaching English, or in English at least for quite a while now, we've worked with the concept of reading comprehension before. Do you feel familiar with this? Reading comprehension? Okay. Very often, the idea of interpretation was confused with the concept of reading comprehension. Make sense to you? And you're going to ask me why confused? Is this a question? Do I see this question in the air? Probably. Okay. Yes, the idea is that people used to understand that interpretation was synonymous to reading comprehension. We would find this in our books, okay? Whenever developing the ability of reading with the students, we would find reading comprehension activities. Those activities would lead the students to identify information in a text. And through this kind of activity, the students would prove that they could understand English, right? Because then the kind of activities that were constructed would lead the students to show their ability to understand in English. I mean, just understanding a meaning that was already in a text. I think this is a bit cliche nowadays to say that the meaning is not in the text anymore, or this is a debate, let's say, among lots of people, right? That it's not in the text, it is in the text, the meaning is given, it's not given, okay, where is the meaning then? Is the meaning in the text still, but there is no guarantee that the intention of the author can be grasped by the reader. Maybe this is also another assertion that we have in relation to that, right? So this has become the core of the debate. Whenever we talk of new literacies and changes and so on. So how do we deal with this issue now, interpretation? Do we still keep up with the reading comprehension activities that we used to? Do students still comprehend, let's say, or should they interpret? But is there a difference between comprehend and interpret? Then, because of the changes then, we started noticing that new terms have emerged in this debate. And the new term is meaning making, understanding that people make meanings. Although it may sound a little bit different or weird, even weird to some students, teachers, and people that we talk to. And I remember having been in another conference in which I mentioned the term meaning making, and somebody asked me, what do you mean by this meaning making? Do texts mean? You mean that we make meaning or don't make meaning? Meaning that, understanding that then he's going to create or invent meanings that are not shared or legitimated by other audiences or by other groups or by other readers in terms of that same text, right? So this is a big issue in this area then, right? So just thinking of what is interpretation, what is meaning making. So going a little bit. So I'm just rescuing them some.
Can I just make a comment there?
All
Yeah, I was wondering when you asked, why do we have to think differently about this whole process of comprehension or interpretation? And I was wondering that people have also changed. Readers are different. You know, they've been relating to meaning, whether they're making or reproducing.
Very good. Very good.
In a different way.
Observation. Thank you. Yeah, that's right. This is also something acknowledged whenever society is studied, that people are different. The young people especially are different, right? And we as well are different in our interaction with language, in our constructing relationship in our communication. However, we still struggle with some rules whenever we want to communicate, because the idea that communication has to be clear and there must be a certain standard, you know, for people to communicate in order to guarantee relationship among those who communicate, right? So, okay, at the same time that this is true, at the same time this is not true anymore. So what changes, I think, in this kind of relationship is that we deal with something that is identified by some authors something such as undecidability, that something is and something is not at the same time. So at the same time that we need this reading comprehension to guarantee the meaning of certain words, we have to understand there is a flexibility for us to make meanings on those terms, on those words we read as well. So there is not only a fixed, let's say, rule in relation to how we interact with the text, or with our text, our context, societies and people around us. Do you think it makes sense? Yes, you have a question to it.
I don't know if I exactly have a question. I have an observation. Because while we are listening to you, we are analyzing what's happening with our lives, and we are analyzing what kind of individuals we are. And I think that when we discuss making of meaning, we need to think of our practices as teachers. Because we as individuals somehow will be present in the spaces of education, right? But very frequently we are going to be somehow on the second plan, in the background, giving importance to what's happening to the learners. And I think that while we are discussing the process of making meaning, we need to think about the change which is expected. I don't know if it's happening really. We would like it to happen, but in the formal spaces of teaching.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it is implied in your proposal for today. Somehow I want to make a point that we as individuals, maybe we are ready to do whatever is necessary to make meanings, but as teachers, not necessarily permit this. And I also think that not all of our students or learners are ready to behave in a different way that they used to be they were expected to a little while ago.
I see. You know, this is the reason why I made use of the term struggle. It seems that we all struggle with, let's say, a with or between or something, you know, that is in between rules and flexibility. You see, at the same time that we think the rules are important, at the same time we know that there aren't so many rules anymore ruling society, right? And society requires more flexibility nowadays. So how to deal with the two different, let's say, I think I should say strengths or tensions, probably, right? So, thank you. So the idea, I've been connecting different authors in different areas in order to try to understand this phenomenon, I would say, right? If I can call it a phenomenon, I think I can. So this is in village view relationship. This is a kind of study that I rescued from researchers in the area of semiotics, and they are trying to explain the image view relationship. And I'm still thinking, I've been thinking about this kind of relationship for years. And I've been thinking, but not only theoretically, this is what I mean. I've been thinking about this kind of theory in my practice, among my students, among those with whom I communicate, and with whom I do research also, right? So, and just show all the faces together so that you have a view there. So those authors, they are Santaella and North, okay? They've done an interesting research in my account, explaining this image-view relationship, explaining the various phases and the influences of images in our society. Okay, the presence of images in our society. We've always had images, as you know. If we go back, very, let's say in early times, so we are already going to find lots of images, and there are lots of studies on that. But my interest is in showing the kind of relationship that the viewer has had then with those images along times, right? That is, they think there was a first phase of images when then we would see those, let's say, pictures on caves. If you remember, this is in very early times of images. So he thinks from that time, they would point out contemplation as the big word, okay, to explain the relationship between the viewer and the image. And they think that we still, in nowadays, have this kind of relationship. Many people are still concentrating on the idea that people should look at pictures and contemplate. There's nothing wrong with that. Of course, that we should also contemplate, right? So contemplation is something important in this kind of relationship, and the other nouns they use also to explain that kind of relationship.